Well, hello again. This is Brian Copeland talking. Welcome to another edition of Copeland's Corner. Welcome to my family room, my high-tech set that I have here behind me. A little bit later on, if all goes well, I'll be joined by a distinguished panel of comics, and we'll talk about some of the news of the week. We just come on and we talk. Sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's funny, but it is always informative. I just wanted to start with it's just something that just bothered me just a lot. You may recall that Trump gave an interview to Sean Hannity, I think about a week and a half ago, where Hannity mentioned that those people on the left were saying that he was going to be a dictator if he was, in fact, elected to a second term. And what Trump said was he would only be a dictator for the first day. He'd be a dictator for a day, just for the first day. Because we all know that once a dictator gets power, that's all they want. It's just one day, and then they'll easily just voluntarily give their power back up. Well, here's what really bothered me, and that is, I believe it was NBC News went to some Trump rally, and they interviewed a bunch of these knuckleheads in their MAGA hats, and they asked them how they felt about Trump being a dictator for a day, and unanimously, they loved the idea. Then they asked how they felt about Trump being a dictator permanently. And that's what was really scary, is the fact that there were so many of these people who said, absolutely, this is exactly what this country needs. We need somebody who's in charge who can cut through all of the red tape and all of the garbage and all of the nonsense and just come in and say, this is the way it is. And one guy made the analogy that it's like when you're in school and the principal needs to give you a paddling. And once the principal comes in and straightens you up by giving you a paddling, then you know not to misbehave anymore and you don't make the same mistakes again. First of all, what school did you go to that your principal was hitting you? I mean, let's start with that premise. What school you going to your principal was giving you paddling? But the very idea that I can guarantee you that the overwhelming majority of these knuckleheads in these MAGA hats who were saying that they want a dictator had a grandfather or an uncle or a great-grandfather, or perhaps a cousin, or an older sibling who fought in World War II, or World War I, or Korea, or Vietnam, and fought for America's freedom, fought for America to be a free country and to be a democracy. And here you are willing to give that away to a real estate con artist from New York. Just that simple. You know, all the blood, all the people who have died over the centuries in order for you to have the right to vote, in order for you to have a say in how this government is run. And you have no problem just throwing that away because you are so brainwashed by the cult of personality that this sacrifice means nothing. You're willing to give away the freedom of this country to a guy who calls American troops who were killed in the line of duty suckers. Now, if you never heard that quote, that's true. That's what he said. He said they were suckers because what was in it for them? So if you're an American troop and you lost your life fighting for this country, you're a sucker because what was in it for you? But hey, these fools with their red hats on, they got no problem whatsoever just handing over the country and handing over their freedom to somebody who's going to be a dictator, somebody who wants to jail their political opponents. You know, somebody who it's been floated, or the idea has been floated that we will somehow target political opponents for assassination. I mean, it's really scary. This election is about democracy. That's what this election is about. It is about democracy. And if you are not voting, you're an idiot. And if you're voting against democracy, you're an idiot. And I'm just flat out going to say, if you're willing to give away your freedom, if you're willing to give away the rights that you have, that people for 250 years have fought for you to have in this country, to a con artist from New York, you're a nit. Just my thought. We'll see what the comics have to say. Podcast we call Headliners on the Headlines, our panel of comics this week. from all over the place, from down in Southern California, who actually started up here. Carlos Alazraqui is with us. Good to see you, Carlos. Thanks for doing the show. I always
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
We have Lauren Mayer, who's now moved next door to me in Oakland. Not literally next door, but Oakland's the next town over. So close enough for me to come by and borrow eggs.
I was going to say I was going to come by for some sugar, so
well,
have coffee. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too. And we got Daymon Ferguson. You're down in the South Bay, right?
Yeah, San Jose.
Down in San Jose. So here's how this is going to work for those of you who are watching. We may be cutting in and out because there is a really bad storm here as we recorded this on Wednesday, and it comes and goes. I mean, the last hour here, excuse me, last hour here in the East Bay where I am, it's been like somebody dumping buckets of gravel on the roof of my house. I mean, that's how hard it's been coming down. Power's been going on and off. But even worse than that is the internet and the cable cutting out. I mean, that's worse than the power. I mean, you don't realize.
Let my ice cream melt. I need my internet.
I mean, isn't it like it's the weirdest thing. I have more anxiety about not being able to find my phone than I had when my kids were little, about like not being able to find one of them at the mall.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean?
I wouldn't go that
Isn't that
far.
terrible? I've had more anxiety about.
You need to find my kid app.
Well, the problem is your kids will keep working even if the power goes out. The problem is the kids, at least you know they're alive. If the power goes out and you forgot to keep your phone or your laptop charged enough, then you really are completely cut off.
And soon the ransom for your phone will be higher than for your children.
Yes, exactly.
Soon now.
Well,
go ahead.
Speaking of outages, I had a cell outage where I was like because the power this was on Sunday, because the power went out, all the cell towers around me were down. So I had nothing. I couldn't even make a call out.
Perfect time to commit a crime. Man, you wouldn't have pinged anywhere.
But it was wet out.
Dang it.
See, I will tell you, I have a landline. I'll throw out a plug to AT&T Uverse, which I'm actually thinking about dumping. But part of the bundle that I got that made it cheaper was to have a landline. So I've got a landline that was my landline number from when I was a kid. I've still got it. I never use it. I never have it plugged in because it's just going to be nobody calls me on that. It's just telemarketers. Yeah. But in the event of a cell outage, when they say that there's a big earthquake, that the cell phones are going to go out, but the landlines will still be useful.
So
but who are you going to call?
Landline?
Pardon?
Traditional landline or VoIP?
Traditional landline, they say the traditional landline will still be operational.
Yeah, I was here during the '89 earthquake. The traditional landlines went out right away.
Did they go out?
Yeah. And the cell phones, now, of course, cell phones were really rare. And the few of us who had them, mine was built into my car. My girlfriend had the suitcase size one. And that's when if you used it a lot, your bill was like $500 a month. Wow. But the cell phones worked and the landlines didn't. Mm-hmm. So I think they're messing with you, Brian.
I remember, Carlos, did you ever play a place in Castro Valley called Mugs back in the day?
I don't know if I did.
It was back in the day. I played with Sam Kennison at Mugs back when I was like 18 years old. Back in the day.
That must have been during the Cobbs on Fillmore days because that was right before me. So.
Oh, okay. Well, this place is in Castro Valley, and I remember there was this guy. What the deal was is that they would have mail. It wasn't a comedy club. They had comedy on Monday nights, but at Monday earlier during the evening they had male strippers in. And so
how did I miss that?
Yeah, they had male strippers in. Women got in for free. Women got in for free to see the male strippers, and then they would let guys in. And guys came in, and it was like $20 for guys to get in. Thinking the women were all lathered up after watching male strippers. And I remember this one guy this is in the late 80s, had one of those suitcase phones in like his truck. And like you never saw a phone in a car back then.
That's Roadhouse.
And so that's what he'd like walk up there with, hey, you need to make a call? What's going on? What's talking about me? You make a call. I got my phone.
Oh, man. That's like Buffalo Bill or whatever. Hey, man, you need to make a call. I got one in my van.
That's a twist on etchings, I'll say that.
Woo.
No one ever invited me to his car to see a cell phone.
Well, come out and see my phone.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, well, lots just to talk about this week. So let's get to it. Here's what I want to start with, and it's something that I've wondered why this has taken so long, to be quite honest with you, to happen. A mother in Michigan by the name of Jennifer Crumbley has become the first parent of a school shooter to be found directly responsible. She was convicted yesterday of involuntary manslaughter. Her son, who was 15, who's 17 now, who had mental health issues, took a gun that she and her husband bought for him, and took him to the gun range to use. And he took this gun to school, killed 4 of his classmates, wounded 7 others. He pled guilty. He's got life without parole. And so they decided to charge her and her husband, and they charged them individually. And they charged them separately, and they're throwing each other under the bus.
Yeah.
You know, and what her defense is basically is that it was the school's responsibility to let her know that he was as disturbed as he was. And on cross-examination, they said, well, did you notice that he was spending time alone in his room, that he was walking around looking sad? Yeah, but, I thought him, having a gun going to the gun range, that's an activity that would kind of cheer him up. And the father actually the one, I guess, is the one who purchased the gun. And they say that the thing that really nailed her was she was the last adult to touch that gun before he had it. So here is my question for you, and that is, do you think that the parents of school shooters should be held responsible? Because I've always thought since Columbine, how in the hell does your kid make pipe bombs in his bedroom and you have no idea?
Well, I think it depends. I think it can be a slippery slope if all parents are responsible. But in this case, I think I've been following this trial as a parent whose kids never had anything I didn't purchase for them before they had driver's licenses, pretty much. And it's not just that they bought the gun, but they ignored the school warning them. So it completely defeated her to the point where they called her the day, and I don't know if you saw online, there was a geometry paper he wrote all over. I have no reason to live. If I shoot people, I'll feel better. A bullet dripping blood. I mean, it couldn't have been more obvious.
Yeah.
And they called her and said, I think you need to take him home. And both she and the husband said, I'm too busy at work, which she then undid because as soon as she got off the phone with the school, she texted the guy she was having an affair with.
Oh, boy.
Who testified against her, might I add?
Yes.
Who testified against her in this?
Yeah,
in this
I don't think
trial.
he had any idea. I mean, no one in general sets out to be a horrible parent, and I'm always careful, to criticize other people's parenting that might be different from mine. But I think this is so egregious.
It's so egregious that something
Yeah,
had to be said.
It kind of feels like the proverbial bartender that didn't take the keys, that kept serving somebody that was drunk and said, hey, have fun driving home, right?
Right.
If only we lived in a world where parents got rewarded for the only thing you should be buying for your kids is condoms and prophylactics and birth control.
And clothes and food would be nice too.
But in terms of what what is essential during that age of confusion, rather than buy a gun, wouldn't it be nice that you got rewarded for I bought my kids all this birth control because I know that they could go crazy. But yeah, I think you are in that using that bartender analogy that you do bear some responsibility because there's so many great articles. There's a great site called Armed with Reason, which I've gotten into arguments with John L. Locke, who's the economist, that's the NRA guy. One of the best things I've ever seen about gun control, and the parents are involved in that, is that when the guy was a soldier in the Army, and he says, even the guns we fired that were similar to AK-47s or similar to Armalite 15s, we weren't allowed to take those back to the garrison. We had to fire them on the range, and we couldn't bring them back to the garrison. So the fact that a kid can have one in the home and can travel with it, that gets into our gun laws, and that would alleviate some of the parents of their responsibilities to, like you say, Lauren, I don't know, sometimes I can't get in their room. It's keep out, it's locked. It's cleaned up when I go in there. They're hiding them. So there's the double-edged sword, right?
Let me ask you this.
Pretty bad.
So you allow? Are your kids teenagers yet? Yeah,
12 and 10, but they're both full-fledged women, quote unquote. At 10 years old.
And you allow locked rooms.
Pardon me?
You allow locked doors.
No, we don't. But some parents might.
Oh
And
no,
I don't. I respect closed doors. I knock because my daughters are teenagers.
And they have to earn that trust too. If there was, if my kids ever my kids are grown now because they're in their 20s, but when they were in high school, sometimes it was almost impossible to open the door because of all the crud on the floor.
Well, yeah.
But they had to earn that trust. And as long as, nothing was completely, molding in their room or they weren't acting in ways that made me suspicious, I did not go in their rooms without knocking, but they earned that.
But again, let's go back to Columbine. As I said, in Columbine, you had these kids building pipe bombs in their bedroom.
Well, I kind of did stuff like that in my bedroom.
Yeah. You built pipe bombs.
I didn't build pipe bombs, but I built a potato gun. Potato gun's just a tube that you put a potato in. You have a little fitting on it, and you put butane in it, and then you have a lighter. You get the sparker from a lighter, and it's fitted in the back, and you hit that and it sparks a butane and shoots a potato far.
And it could hurt, could do some damage.
Oh, I broke windows with
that.
Oh yeah. I don't think the act of buying a child a gun is the problem. That once you take that gun, take the child to the range with the gun and then lock it up in a safe.
Yeah. Security.
Well, that's the other issue is the safe. I saw the code was 000.
Oh yeah.
On the safe. That's going to be a real hard one to outwit.
All right. Well, let me ask you this then. Those of you with minor children, and you two guys with minor children, do you have any problem with the idea of buying your kid a gun right now, buying your kid a gun and taking your kid to the gun range and showing her how to use it and keeping it locked up and, doing all the responsible things? Do you have any problem whatsoever teaching her how to use a firearm at this age?
You go ahead, Damon.
They don't want to.
Yeah.
That's the simple answer. Is my girls don't want to.
You've asked them? It's come up?
They know that I own a couple of guns and that I've been to the range a few times. I haven't been in a long time. I grew up around hunting and, sporting guns as a kid. And, they were always for sporting purposes. It was a real part of the culture where I grew up, but my daughters have no interest in it. But if they wanted to learn to shoot, I'd teach them to shoot. But, my guns are in a locked safe in my office. I don't even have them in my home.
That's fair. Yeah, my father-in-law is a big gun person. We get in arguments, of course, on that issue. But he's sporting competition, 22 pistol competition, all about safety. He repurposes his own ammo. He loves it. He loves the machinery of it. He loves the safety of it. In a case like that, I would love my girls to be able to learn from him and go to the range with him. I wouldn't buy them a gun. Mm-hmm. I would say go with your grandpa or go to the range and rent one that they have there. But I think it's important because my theory is I don't want the first time my daughters to see a gun is at a sorority party or a frat party in college and somebody go, look what I got. And I want them to immediately know that I'm out, I'm done. That's not safe. You know what I mean? So I know think that educating your kids on guns is one thing, but buying them one is that one step further, I think.
Well, have you fired?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Have you ever fired one, Carlos?
I've fired all kinds of weapons, especially on Reno 911, Gatling guns, machine guns. I fired Russian rifle. I fire shotguns. We go target shooting with my friend Manny, and I love it.
All right, let me ask you this. Since you talked about, I'm going to pivot for just a second,
okay.
Lauren, and then we'll come back to you. I want to pivot on this because this was a topic I was going to get to a little bit later on. And you being an expert on this, you could probably give us a little bit of insight on this. Since you fired so many weapons on Reno 911, they're charging Alec Baldwin again over that shooting of the cinematographer on the set of the movie Rust, where he was given a gun that he was told was a cold gun, meaning that it had blanks in it, and he pointed it at the cinematographer, and depending on who you believe, he either pulled the trigger and there was a live round in it, or it was cocked and it went off and there was a live round in it, and Helena Hutchins, who was a cinematographer, ended up getting killed. So they're charging him with involuntary manslaughter, and they're charging the armorer this was her first job.
Yes.
And nobody to this day has satisfactorily explained why there was live ammunition on the set. So having fired on a set, fired weapons, tell me what the procedure was. I mean, did they always tell you, hey, there's no bullets in here? Tell me what the procedure was.
Guillaume, we had an armorer named Guillaume, who was the second one on the show. And yeah, always telling me what quarter blanks, would you use quarter blanks? Do you want earplugs? I want to show you where the round is. There's this many rounds in the gun. Don't point it at anybody. And or when we were firing, he would always show me the weapon first. Or if we were going to fake fire a weapon with no rounds in it, but we were able to click the trigger, he would show me the chamber. He would show me everything. Like nothing is in there. I'm going to fire it a couple of times blank. So they would always make sure. And I think as a producer of the film, he's not just an actor. He's producing the film.
Right.
So he has to know that even though I've been handed a cold weapon, I got to check myself. And or the armorer has to show me what the round, that these are blank rounds or these are not live or whatever. So yeah, we were always made triple sure. We had safety meetings and we made triple sure that what we were firing was safe, where we were pointing it was safe, et cetera, et cetera.
All right. So do you think that Alec Baldwin being charged with involuntary manslaughter is the correct action here? I put the blame on the armor.
I do, but you're a producer. And unfortunately, gosh, as a producer, you better be a producer and follow through. But yeah, it's hard.
He was handing a gun and told the gun. He was handing a gun and told the gun.
The first rule of gun safety is you treat every gun as if it was loaded. I mean, we all know that.
Right.
If you hand me a gun and tell me it's unloaded, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open the chamber or take out the magazine and work the action and make sure it's unloaded. And then I'm still going to keep it in a safe direction. And why was he? If it was just going to be a shot,
he was setting up the shot. Is what the deal was.
Okay,
he was setting up the shot.
Should have been a dummy gun. I mean, that goes to your point on the armor, but he still had a functional handgun in his hand, pointed at somebody, and either pulled the trigger or negligently left it cocked and went off. One of those two things happened, but he still had what he knew was a functional weapon in his hand and pointed it at a human.
Yeah, that's just, it's hard. Obviously a bad accident, Brandon Lee, right? All those kinds of things can happen. And so as an actor, maybe not, but as a producer, you've been on so many sets that it's certainly not being charged with involuntary lapse, but some sort of negligence there, especially the experience he has. There's got to be some form of negligence he could be charged with. Maybe not to that degree, though.
If you're sitting on a jury, would you vote to convict?
I haven't heard all of the things. Apparently, I've heard a story where he was asking her not to be there. Like, please don't be this way because I'm not going to aim it this way. Apparently, I don't know all the details. So based off this information, as a juror, I would go, yeah, dude, you're a producer. You got to check that gun. You can't just trust the armorer. Because they took that gun to the range and used live rounds on it. And it was just creepy.
Why were there live rounds on the set?
Yeah, and nobody knows. Nobody has satisfactorily answered that question.
There shouldn't be live rounds. Yeah,
there should not be.
Yeah.
You guys remember John Eric Hexum? Remember that name?
Yeah.
That was a famous case before Brandon Lee. He was a good-looking actor, a good-looking model actor who was on a show called Cover Up. Mm-hmm. And he was in between, it was like some kind of a spy show, and it was in his first season, and he was, as you know, on a set, there's a lot of standing around and waiting. And he had a gun in his hand, and was screwing around playing Russian roulette with it. It was loaded with blanks.
Yeah.
And he put it against his head and pulled the trigger and got the one that had the round in it. And what he didn't know is that there's paper wadding, and I didn't know that. Most people didn't know, so there were till this happened to him. But that there's paper wadding in a blank, and it went into his head and cracked his skull and went into his brain and ended up killing him.
Yeah.
So he died shooting himself in the head with a blank.
Yeah.
Well, even without the paper wad, there's still a significant amount of pressure that comes out of the barrel of that gun, even with a blank. I mean, if you put a blank gun, even without a wad in there, what there would be, and put it up against a wall and fired it with it would blow a hole in that wall just based on the pressure coming out of that gun.
Yep. It's just too dangerous. Yeah. And certainly by now in the significantly into the 2000s. We're not in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. We should be pretty diligent about safety with firearms on set, and it just seems like that set didn't have it.
All right, well, there has been some talk since this happened about not using guns in films anymore, making them all CGI, and having all these CGI. Do you think that's going too far? Now, I'll open up to all three of you. You think that's going too far?
I've spoken. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was going to say earlier, I've never seen a real gun in my life. The most dangerous thing my parents had in their house was a blender. I've never seen a gun. I don't need to. I worked for a handgun control lobby when I was an intern in college and learned enough and heard enough stories. Like you were saying, I didn't need my dad to take me to a shooting range to teach me that if I ever saw a gun at a sorority party, not that I got invited to any, but if I had, I would have left the room. I didn't need to see it.
Yeah.
But I've been convinced in movies when guns are fake, like not a CGI gun, but a prop gun that isn't a gun, that doesn't, you can make prop guns that don't have chambers in them. I mean, to me, that seems obvious. And then you can CGI just the sound effect, which it sounds like they did on your show, Carlos, where you clicked it, but there was no actual explosion coming out of it.
Yeah, at times. And at times we fired blank rounds. I'm sorry. We don't need to have real blood in a movie for me to be convinced that there was somebody who got wounded. So I don't see why that's not an option before you go to CGI. Yeah.
I'm not an expert at all. I've never been on a movie set firing a gun, but I mean, I would think that, even though CGI is pretty good, you're still not going to get the same reaction that you get from firing even a blank. I mean, it seems like it would propose a significant acting challenge.
Yeah.
But it's acting. I don't know. It's a great story. I did a panel once and I forgot the actor's name, but he was in all the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And he was telling this story that when they were filming, what's the movie with Dustin Hoffman and Laurence Olivier as the sadistic dentist?
Oh, Marathon Man.
Yeah. And when they got to filming their scene, Dustin Hoffman goes up to Laurence Olivier and says, I ran all night to get prepared for this scene. And Olivia's famous line is, my dear boy, you might have just tried acting.
Yeah.
I mean, so I feel like, can you not, if you've got a prop gun in your hand that's not actually blowing anything up, you can still act.
You can fake the recoil.
There definitely is an authenticity to firing some of the heavier weapons for sure. It's hard to emulate with acting, and I guess an excuse is you don't have time for that. If you have a proper armor on the set and you do the proper training, you make sure you're not pointing the weapon directly at people. There are steps you can take to avoid these kinds of tragedies as they are.
Don't have live ammunition on the set.
Yeah, that's part of it. Exactly. But the other thing you mentioned though too, Carlos, and that is, this armor, this was her first gig. Her dad is a really well-respected armorer, a very experienced armorer, and she's assisted him a couple of times. But this was her first gig. This is a low-budget indie film, and they did it on the cheap. It's obvious that they did it on the cheap. So being a producer, I mean, I think you can make an argument for negligence there.
Doesn't that seem like the last thing you'd want to cut corners in on?
Correct, right?
Cut the catering budget. Costumes don't have to have authentic period underwear or whatever it is. That they're spending the money on. That seems like it would probably be the most important thing to keep.
I don't need a trailer. I'll change in my Volkswagen Bug. Get an armor.
Shifting gears. Okay, a lot of Trump news as always. Trump is making an argument tomorrow. Tomorrow being Thursday, which is today when this is being dropped, before the Supreme Court, arguing against Colorado and I believe it's Maine and the other states that are trying to keep him off the ballot because they say that he violates the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which is an amendment that says that if you have in any way been a part of an insurrection or a rebellion against the United States after having taken an oath to protect the Constitution, that you are ineligible to hold any other federal office. Now, what's interesting is the argument you're hearing from a lot of people, including Democrats. I was surprised that Gavin Newsom, governor of California, took this position, was that we should stay out of this and let the people decide. Let the people decide. And I look at this and I go, wait a minute. The Constitution also says you got to be 35 to be president. So if you're 30 and you're running, you wouldn't be going, well, let the people decide. Constitution is very clear. It says you got to be 35. So now what they're doing, you got Matt Gaetz and Elise Stefanik and a couple of the other right wing sycophants who are the 60 that have signed on the legislation saying that Trump wasn't part of an insurrection. That's their debate right now. So I'm curious, what do you think with this court, where a third of the court was appointed by Trump? Do you think that they're going to go with, I mean, it's there in black and white, for God's sakes. Do you think they're going to go with the Constitution, or do you think you're going to go with Trump? If you're betting.
This court?
This court.
Yeah.
I mean, they managed to find a way around precedent that is just jaw-dropping. It's states' right until it's not. But I also feel like they're going to punt as much as they can. So if they can just send it back to individual states without, like, basically saying the states have to decide if he is an insurrectionist. But my favorite argument, and I do think they will turn him down on this one, is that the Constitution doesn't say he can't run. It says he can't hold the office. And so their claim is that, it's all about whether or not he can run. So theoretically, somebody who's 14 and not a citizen and, has whatever other disqualifying things could theoretically run, that just, they can win the election, but they can't take office.
Interesting. That might be an interesting footnote. But it was certainly the way things have gone. You would think that this Supreme Court is on his side. But I personally think he should be banned from the ballot. Obviously, he incited an insurrection and therefore should not be allowed. I have no problem with it, but I would be shocked if his hand-picked Supreme Court disappointed him to that extent.
But keep in mind, though, they have ruled against him on a lot of things. Whether or not the January 6th committee could have his personal records. And bank records and things. There have been 3 or 4 big decisions that have gone against him or his own appointees. I'll tell you the one that drives me crazy is the fact that Clarence Thomas, whose wife was part of part of January 6th, will not recuse himself.
And it's shocking because he's usually such a paragon of ethics.
Yeah. That's more than a pubic hair on a Coke can.
Oh.
I forgot about that.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And what was the long dong schlong something like that?
Long dong silver.
Yep.
Yeah.
Long
I
dong
had
silver.
a boss like that. He wasn't that gross once, but he used to tell me about things he had watched. It's like, he didn't end up on the Supreme Court, though. Thank God.
Thank goodness. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. There's no precedent for this. This has not been tested. This particular little one line in the 14th Amendment has not been tested yet.
Well, it hasn't had to be. And the reason it was there was because of Confederates.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why it was there, was because of they were afraid of some former Confederate, getting elected and, after trying to overthrow the government during the Civil War. And then suddenly now he's, president. Well, they don't say president. He's a senator or something.
Yeah.
My theory is that they're going to make some ridiculous decision to try to deflect how badly the Roe v. Wade thing bit them in the butt.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, this court has lost any credibility, and I feel for poor John Roberts, who's trying to,
Poor John Roberts. I wouldn't.
I'm being facetious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All
But,
right.
relative compared to the other ones, at least he's
he's
just
the
a
mummy.
Federalist. He's not an idiot.
Yeah, he's not a complete sycophant. I agree with you. He's a very studious, evil man.
Yes.
but it's his legacy, and he realizes
wants it
that
to look good. Yeah.
it's the Roberts Court.
Yeah.
Period.
It is the Roberts Court.
It's the Roberts Court, and it's got the lowest approval rating of any Supreme Court in the history of polling right now, in terms of people having confidence in the independence of that court as an equal branch of government.
But boy, does that court make women on the court look good. I mean, it's the only sanity left on the court is the women.
Sotomayor and
well, the two of them, the 3 liberal women, or the 2.
Yeah, there's
not Amy Coney Barrett.
But she's voted against him a couple of times.
Yeah.
Give the woman a little credit. She's not a total step forward.
Well, she voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. So,
but we knew that based on her.
Yeah, we knew that.
Yeah, she said she was going to do that going in.
Yeah, Kavanaugh said he wasn't, that it was established precedent.
Well, they all said that. What's his name said that too. The one who
Gorsuch?
Gorsuch, thank you. The one who stole Merrick Garland's seat. Claimed it was settled law.
Yeah.
So basically they all committed perjury.
Well, it was settled law until they unsettled it. I guess
Until it
that's their workaround.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Shifting gears, we got the Super Bowl coming up.
You mean you mean the conspiracy psyop bowl?
That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
Oh, sorry.
That's exactly what it is that I was going to bring up. So you heard this nutcase conspiracy theory that Fox News is pushing it. Fox News started pushing it. And so now right-wing influencers online and on right-wing AM crazy man talk radio are talking about this, where Taylor Swift, there's some conspiracy they believe where Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, her boyfriend on the Kansas City team, are in a conspiracy where they are in the tank for Biden.
Okay.
And they are going to do something to swing the results of the Super Bowl so the Kansas City wins.
Okay.
And so that Taylor Swift is then going to endorse Biden at the Super Bowl.
At the Super Bowl.
At the Super Bowl. Now, they're scared to death of her because she actually came out and told people to register to vote. Some right-wing MAGA nut from her hometown ran because she'd been apolitical, but somebody ran and she went, and said to people, she did I think it was a Twitter video where she said, go out and register to vote today. And they got 34,000 Gen Zers to vote in one day. So they're terrified of her. And her followers, but it's just the stuff that they believe. The right wingers believe this.
I wonder how much Fox is motivated by the fact they lost the Super Bowl to CBS this year.
Part of the best part of this whole story is now a lot of the maggot types are now, because they're so pissed about this, they're going to root for the 49ers from the bluest city in the country.
Well, yeah, but let's not forget what the blue team city did to Colin Kaepernick. Let's not. The entirety of the NFL is pretty right wing in general. I mean, they've been in bed with the military industrial complex for years. Why are there Blue Angels flyovers at the Super Bowl? That doesn't belong there.
That was pretty recent in history.
But this whole story just rivets me because I have a lot of friends whose daughters are complete Taylor Swift fans. I actually did a Taylor Swift song last week for one of my weekly songs. I'm learning a lot of respect for her as an artist. But my favorite is
good lyrics.
People are now accusing her of being a gold digger, using Kelce to boost her profile. I mean, they cannot handle. She's probably the most famous woman on the planet, and certainly one of the richest and the most successful.
Well, she's a billionaire. She's a billionaire.
That if there's an ounce of this that's true, of what these people believe, that will take the sting out of the Kansas City Chiefs beating the 49ers if that happens, just to know that they'll be pissed off. That'll piss off Republicans. I mean, like, yeah, we lost, but all right, way to go, Taylor. We all know that Kyle Juszczyk's wife is the one that's designing all the poofy coats for Taylor and for Mahomes' wife. There's a lot of love in that room. Kelce and Kittle, they love each other. It's so much horse manure, but no, the Taylor Swift is not an arm of left-wing politics. She happens to be liberal. She happened to stand up for an issue in her special that she felt wasn't right. That I think was it for abortion, or she famously says it in her special that she thinks it's not right.
I didn't see her special because I don't have.
Yeah, it was one of her specials that she did.
I don't have young daughters, so I missed it.
I have two. The other one I saw it. I don't remember it though.
The other one I love is they're telling her on Fox that celebrities should stay out of politics. They're begging her because they're terrified. And now let's turn to the latest on politics from Scott Baio.
Yeah, and Kevin Sorbo
and
right?
Ted Nugent.
What's interesting?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What I found interesting is that they're piling on her for going to her boyfriend's football games. But if she didn't go, they'd call her disloyal.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah,
but it's getting them to care about climate change because all of a sudden private jet emissions are a concern at Fox News.
Yeah, it's all nonsense. This country's always been afraid of strong women. Insert Hillary Clinton.
But in fairness, you cannot be an open right winger in Hollywood and expect to work. You just can't. I mean, I think about all of those who are really notorious, who are not. I mean, you got James Woods who's suing the DNC. claiming this because of the DNC that he can't work. But people like him, Dean Cain, who played Superman on Lois and Clark, Kevin Sorbo, who else? Chachi, all that. Maybe they're just past their time. I don't know. But I will tell you, the one right winger who's working. The one right winger who's working is doing fine is Kelsey Grammer. But I've interviewed him and he won't talk about it. I go, have you lost work because of your political positions? He goes, yep. And I go, give me an example because I don't want to talk about it.
I think that's too easy. I mean, you look at people like, Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo, who didn't come out as far right until way after their careers were not really thriving, at least.
Yeah.
I don't think that, if somebody is still really, Kelsey Grammer is still working a lot, and they did the reboot of Frasier. Dean Cain was kind of eye candy, and I thought he was cute then, but I didn't necessarily think he was that gifted an actor. I don't know. And to me, that seems really, Roseanne Barr went bonkers, and I think it's really easy to say you can't get work if you're a Republican. I think if you're a far right nut job, that says something about your mental state that might also affect your ability to hold it together on set.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of moderate Republicans and or conservatives that are still finding work. I know a couple of them here in this business, and so I don't think that holds water. Yeah, if you're at extreme and you're a right wing and you're denying the election results, that's troublesome, man.
And you may be denying
Gina Carano, some of the things she said were kind of like, kind of weird, dude. And to some extent, we all have to please our employers, and that's the reality of the world. So whether or not it's political, you got to be smart. I can't stand up and have certain opinions about the Middle East or whatever, because it could work in the opposite direction, right? So we try to some things we have to remain neutral on as hard as it can be.
Yes.
All of our job is to sell tickets. That's what we do.
So Republicans are the biggest advocates of at-will working, where you can be fired for any reason, not necessarily
or no reason whatsoever,
or no reason fired for no reason. They're the proponents of that. They oppose unions and other things that would protect people. So you can't have it both ways.
Let me ask you this. Let me throw this into the mix, since this kind of goes along with what it is we're talking about. Felicity Huffman. Best known for Sports Night and for Desperate Housewives, and she's done a million things, and just a fantastic actress who you've seen in a million roles over the last 20 some odd years. 5 years ago, got caught up in that Varsity Blues scandal where she paid $15,000 to have her daughter's SAT score doctored so she could get into USC.
Yep.
She got caught, unlike what happened to Lori Loughlin, who also got caught. Lori Loughlin from Full House, who also got caught. She, Felicity Huffman didn't make any bones about it. She didn't deny that she did it. She didn't make excuses. She said, yes, I did it. I'm guilty. She pled guilty. She got a $30,000 fine. She spent 11 days in jail up here in Dublin. As a matter of fact, that's where the women's jail is. A federal jail is up here in Dublin. 11 days in Dublin, and did something like 650 hours of community service. But I didn't realize it's been 5 years, and she hasn't worked.
No, she has not.
She's not been able to get work, and so she's come out and spoken for the first time about it this week, about how it's like her old life has died. And so they had a big discussion about it on The View. And one of the things she said was, and I'll make sure I get this quote correct. She said that I felt like I had to give my daughter a chance at a future, unquote. And when I heard, that's exactly what I thought.
That's white privilege right there, boy. It's like personified.
Her husband is William H. Macy, another fabulous actor. And from what I hear too, I hear they're both lovely people, but they're very well off. And what are you talking about? You have to give your daughter a chance at a future. But anyway, so they were saying the consensus on The View is that she's been punished enough. We've all done stupid things before, and they shouldn't destroy your entire career. She came forward. She admitted what she did. She paid her debt to society, and she's apologetic. She's remorseful. So should she be canceled forever for making that mistake? Again, whereas you had others who fought it and lied about it and tried to blame other people for it and blame the guy who was behind the whole scheme, where she just flat out just came out, I did it. Yeah.
I was going to give her the benefit of the doubt until you told me she said she did it to give her daughter a chance.
Yeah, exactly right.
Privileged daughter of wealthy parents. I agree. I mean, for her to take responsibility, she did what we say we want people to do, which is to acknowledge their mistake, make sure it never happens again. But that just is like nails on chalkboard to me. I had people tell me that I was abandoning my children because both of my sons had some struggles in high school. I did not pay the $500 an hour SAT tutors. Both of them did 2 years of junior college, and they both are thriving now. But I had parents on the peninsula tell me that I was a horrible mother because if I wanted to give my kids a chance, I needed to pay this tutor so they got great SAT scores, instead of saying they're a little bit, they're going to be fine in junior college for a couple of years, let themselves fully develop. And they're both doing great. And those kids whose parents spent all that money to get them into schools they weren't really necessarily suited for, often those kids dropped out and they're struggling now. So.
And I will tell you, my kids went to a private high school, private Catholic high school where, that was the norm. And so I did it. I paid for the SAT tutors and the SAT courses and all of this other stuff in order to help to boost their resumes in order to get in. And, and they went to fine schools. I'm not going to say where, but they weren't Harvard, Yale, Princeton or anything like that, but they're all thriving. They're all doing great. But it's just, I look back at it now and just thinking, it was a waste of money. Not because they didn't get into Harvard or something, but it was just just let them. I didn't do any of that crap. When you guys took your SATs, did you take a class first to learn how to do it?
I did a book, and that was it.
Yeah,
and I got into Ivy League schools, and I went to Yale with a crappy high school background because I was a good student. It was a good place for me. But somebody whose parents have to spend money to get the kids. I was also a real type A good girl and stressed out of my mind about it, but that was where I thrived. But kids who don't, my kids both had friends who went not to Yale, but like Stanford and, Northwestern and really good schools where they weren't quite suited for it and dropped out after their freshman year because they just, I think anyway, this whole, you're not a good parent unless you do all this extraordinary stuff.
Yeah. It's much more difficult for women of Felicity Huffman's age to get work anyway. And when you add that asterisk, it makes it even far more difficult. And you'd far just get somebody that's akin to her abilities in acting and akin to her level of fame and just say, you know what, it's just easier to hire this person.
I don't know. There's also but I think there's a fascination about her since she has been off the radar for so long. If I would hire her just for the PR value. I think people.
Well, that's what Whoopi said. Whoopi said she's been punished enough, and Whoopi said that she said on the air, if I can find something for us to do together, I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there has to be a path to redemption, otherwise people aren't going to change their behaviors. I mean, we've got to give the people a way to make amends. Otherwise, they're not gonna.
I'm not rushing to see a movie just because Felicity Huffman's in it.
No.
Sorry.
No, but I also don't feel that sorry for her. She's well known enough that she was able to get herself on The View. I mean, if I had to do 11 days in prison for doing something stupid, I wouldn't be able to redeem myself on national TV.
Hey, she got nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah. No, she's good.
Yeah. She got an Oscar nomination. She's got a number of Emmy nominations. And I think she's either been nominated for or won a Tony. She's a fantastic actress who made a stupid mistake. Now, when you look at the Lori Loughlin stuff, that really pisses you off.
Yes.
I mean, because there were really rich people, and they were doing stuff like claiming that their daughters were on the rowing team and had their daughters sit on a rowing machine and take pictures of them on the rowing machine, claiming that was them actually rowing. And they actually took spots away from young women who earned those positions by being on the rowing team.
And one of the daughters was an influencer. I think she went to USC and was posting these things. I don't care about school. I'm just here for the partying.
Yeah, she did.
And I want to qualify my comment about not going to see something because Felicity Huffman's in it. Nobody's going to go see anything because I'm in it either. So I'm not.
I would. But I wouldn't avoid something because Felicity Huffman's in it either. I mean, it would.
Correct.
It would.
I don't see it just because she's an older woman, and I feel like there's so much ageism in Hollywood. If there is anything with a protagonist who's a woman over, say, 40, I'm there.
Yeah, and at least she's contrite, right? She has some contrition, says, I did something wrong, and I want to be forgiven, and that goes a long way, as opposed to somebody that says, it's not fair, I'm a victim. If they can do it to me, they can do it to anybody. So if that guy can still run for president, Felicity Huffman should still be able to be in Hollywood.
And what's funny is that's one of the things they said on The View is that here you have a woman who paid her debts to society for trying to fix an SAT test.
Yeah.
Yet you have a guy who is a court has determined he's a sexual offender, that he's a rapist, and he might be the president of the United States. So what is, let me ask you this, another show business story. Kumail Nanjiani, did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Who's a great comic and who did that great film with his wife, The Big Sick.
The Big Sick, yeah.
A couple years ago, he and his wife wrote together a funny comedy. His next role after that was in the movie The Eternals. By Marvel film, The Eternals, which I think was the first one after the whole big Thanos thing, that they spent 15 years building. And the movie didn't do well, and it got bad reviews. In fact, Rolling Stone said that the movie will bore you to death. And so they've got a story today where they say that he has come out and talked about how the reviews for that film were so bad and bothered him so much that he actually had to go into therapy.
Yeah.
Then he actually had to go in therapy in order to deal with the reviews. And I'm curious as to whether or not any of you guys have ever had reviews that have bothered you that much. As a general rule, because I do a lot of theater, so I get reviewed, in all the theater stuff that I do. And I was taught by my director early on, don't read it. Have somebody you trust read it and have them tell you whether it'll sell tickets or whether it won't. And I broke the rule one time, and that was the last play that I did, Grandma and Me and Ode to Single Parents. I got the longest standing ovation I ever got in my career. The reviews were, and I read them, the reviews were absolute raves, except for one critic who didn't get it, who slammed it, who didn't get it, slammed it. And of course, that's the one that kept me awake and drove me crazy at night. And the one thing that was like where I felt vindicated was I won the Broadway World Award for Outstanding Performance in a Solo Play for 2023. So that, it's like, okay, yeah, you really didn't get it, but it did bother me. So have you guys gotten bad reviews before, and have they, bothered you to the point where it's like, I think I need to lay on somebody's couch for a while to talk about this?
I go to therapy for other reasons, but sure. Reno's been subjected to bad reviews, stand-up specials, or even during the comedy competition, there might have been somebody that said something about me personally.
Yeah.
And so you learn to just try not to pay attention to that. You just do your work, because somebody can hate the Mona Lisa, right? Yeah. Boring, blah, blah. There's people out there that probably hate that painting. So it's all relative. So yes, I've gotten bad reviews. It does affect me, but I've been to therapy for other reasons outside of that.
Well, we're in show business. We all have.
It's tough.
I've done therapy mostly because I can't get to the point where I'm in a position to be reviewed. So that's what but there's also a lot of rejection. I just found out that a theater that I thought was going to pick up the musical that I just finished is only doing name shows. And so it's more of the disappointment. I think reviews are different because you're dealing with a subjective opinion, particularly in your case, Brian. And I actually wrote a letter to the editor based on that review, because I was at the opening of Grandma and Me, and that person is an idiot. But, the joke is, if you can do, you do. If not, you review. And I don't necessarily think all reviewers are idiots, but there is a lot of need to prove themselves by putting down other things. But there's also just a lot of rejection in this business. Audiences don't show up. You don't get the gig.
Yeah.
And I think everybody should be in therapy.
Yeah.
It's I will tell you my favorite review story, and I don't think he'll be upset that I mentioned his name. I know, Carlos, you know Rob Becker.
Yeah.
Rob Becker. Rob Becker started out as a stand-up here and came up with us, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And he wrote this solo show that started at the Improv in San Francisco called Defending the Caveman.
Yeah.
And what it's about is men and female relationships.
I remember that.
It was a big hit in San Francisco, so he took it to Dallas. And it was a huge hit at the Improv in Dallas, and he took to Chicago, and then he booked it in a theater and got it booked at the Helen Hayes Theater on Broadway. And he was brilliant in the way he set it up, because it's a lot of people compare it to Mars and Venus, the show, and it's a very funny show, and it's a great relationship show. And what he did was brilliant was he invited all of the marriage family therapists to come out and see it for free. He sent, invitations out to them when they were opening up. And so then the therapist would come and they would love the show. And then they'd go back and they would recommend it to their clients. Okay. So, and so then his clients would come to the place would be packed. So the Helen Hayes Theater is absolutely packed to the gills because of this. And the New York Times critic comes and just rips it, just absolutely shreds it. And it had been packed. And then the audience died off because of this one review. So he kept running it, and eventually the snowball started again, and he ended up filling up the Helen Hayes again. And so the critic writes a second review saying, "I told you not to go see this show."
Mm-hmm.
Jerk.
I told you not to go see this show.
Wow.
Anyway, so he said it died off again for a little while after that, and then it came back and was packed, and they left it alone. And to this day, it is the longest running solo show in the history of Broadway.
I love it.
But I mean, can you imagine that? You don't see it, and then the people don't listen, and they go see it anyway, and writing a second review saying, "I told you not to see this show."
Yeah, I'm going to do a plug here. There's a new animated show I'm on called Rock, Paper, Scissors. Ron Funches, Tom Lennon, and myself. I play scissors. And we just put little nuggets on Instagram. And already people are tearing it apart without even seeing it because they feel power. They feel power to say, this is the Nickelodeon that I grew up with. Oh, my God, they've run out of ideas, blah, blah, blah. And that's just part of being available to the public. Yeah. There is always going to be an avenue for people to just want to feel powerful. And now, unfortunately, it's not just critics. It's just every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and Joe or whatever that feels that I want to take somebody down. And you have to just kind of just take it with a grain of salt and just go, you're not going to be able to please everybody. And God, what a segue here. But it's like Joe Biden. Joe Biden is being asked to do the impossible. You better be pro-Israel, pro-Muslim on the Middle East. You better be pro-student loan or anti-student loan. You better be pro-immigration or anti-immigration. You got to be pro this. You got to please everybody. And at some point, we all have to realize in whatever endeavor we're in, politics or we can't please everybody.
No,
and
you
there
can't.
will be negative reviews of anything you do. Jesus Christ didn't heal everybody. Yeah, he was weak. I didn't like his haircut. Why does he got to walk around naked all the time? All that kind
Why
of stuff.
did it take him 3 days to get out of that cave?
Yeah, exactly.
Get that all the time.
Winner. There you go.
I'm doing some work on a project with Rob Reiner, and I was asking him if he ever read reviews, and he said never. Out of all his movies, Harry Met Sally, he never reads reviews. He said the only review he ever read was a review of Misery based on Stephen King's novel, and the only reason he read it was because the critic had reviewed a scene that was in the book that wasn't in the movie.
Wow. So
the critic had not seen the movie clearly, but had reviewed a scene that was in the book and not in the movie. And so he wrote him a letter and said, look, if you don't like the movie, that's fine. But don't, slam me for something that I didn't even film. So I guess they got another reviewer and had him come out and do a legitimate review on it. Yeah. But it's just, there's nothing to be gained by reading your own reviews. It's just because here's the thing: if you believe the good ones, then you got to believe the bad ones.
Yep.
I was going to bring up the kind of reviews. I was going to bring up my YouTube channel, which does not even come close to Rob Reiner, but I put out songs every week, and I get mostly positive comments, which is great. I do political comedy songs every week, but because I skew liberal and I'm female and I'm Jewish, let's just say I have been called the C word spelled more different ways than I knew existed.
Wow.
And, but, the first time when it started happening, it wasn't just that they were critical, they were threatening. Yeah. But I realized the only thing they're mostly probably 20-something incels sitting in their basements, and the only thing they really pose a threat to is the English language. So now,
good for you.
when I don't get them, I almost feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Be afraid when they love your work. Oh boy,
where are my trolls? I missed them.
Spell my name right.
I'm not relevant anymore.
I forget who said it, but somebody said haters make you famous. So
yeah, ask Carrot Top.
Ask Brock Purdy. Yeah.
Let's end with this. Today is the 50th anniversary of the release of Blazing Saddles. Have we all seen Blazing Saddles?
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a quote by Mel Brooks I had not read before where he said, I just wanted to exercise both my angels and demons. I said to my writers, look, fellas, don't worry. This movie will never get released. Never. Warner Brothers will see it and they'll say, let's bury it. So let's go nuts. So I showed this movie to my kids about 2 years ago, and I hadn't seen it in years. I remember when I first saw it, I was a kid, and just, that bean scene. I mean, it's if you're a 12-year-old kid, a fart joke's the funniest thing on the face of the planet. And it just, I didn't get a giggle out of them. Yeah, well, truthfully, I didn't get a giggle out of them, not a snicker out of them, anything. So I don't know how long it's been since. I'm assuming you've all seen it. Have you?
I
all
saw it
seen
about 4 years ago in Idaho with the mixed company and even the kids, and I was like, "Wow, this could not be made today."
No, but my dad, it was my late father's favorite movie, and he showed it to my kids when they were way too young and did not understand that there were certain lines they could not quote in public because some of the funniest lines, you can't say that. I'm sorry, up yours, etc. But I think because they saw it as kids and they associate it with my dad, even though they know it can't be made today, you waited too long to show your kids because your kids are the same ages as mine, right, Brian? They're in their 20s.
I think so. Well, let me ask, do you think it holds up?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Do you?
I do. I think it couldn't be made today. I agree with that absolutely.
No.
But I still laugh when I see it. And I think a lot of the criticism of it, they're missing the point of the
Exactly.
movie.
Yeah.
There's one line in it when Gene Wilder's character is talking to Sheriff Bart, and he says, they're the simple people, salt of the earth, morons. And that's to me, that's the thesis statement of the entire movie, is they're mocking this point of view.
Yeah.
And it was an ad lib too.
Yeah.
I've because it was my dad's favorite movie. I've got the whole book on the making of it and all the things that were ad libs and all the times that Warner Brothers said, you cannot have her say that, especially a lot of the stuff with Madeline Kahn. She cannot say this. And he said, oh yeah, we'll cut it. And he just didn't.
Well, I will tell you that picture is the reason that Richard Pryor became Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because Richard Pryor was doing Cosby-esque kind of comedy for years, and Ed Sullivan Show and all that stuff. And he was a writer on Blazing Saddles and was supposed to play Sheriff Bart. And for some reason, Cleavon Little got it. I don't know
because
the reason why.
It was an insurance issue because he had some substance abuse issues.
Is that what it was?
And then he finally said, let's make sure Bart less of a comedian, more of a handsome leading man.
So that's why they should.
Yeah, and Richard Pryor was the one who said, let's hire, it was his idea, apparently.
Well, apparently he was still upset that he didn't get the part, that he left Hollywood and came up here to the Bay Area and started hanging out with pimps and the street people. And that's where Richard Pryor who became, in my opinion, probably one of the three greatest comedians to ever live, was because of that. So where's everybody playing? Where can we see it, Carlos?
Well, I'm not playing live as a comedian that much anymore, but Rock, Paper, Scissors premieres February 12th. There will be promos for it on the Nickelodeon broadcast of the Super Bowl. So check that out on February 12th. Rock, Paper, Scissors. I play scissors.
Paper, scissors. And what's the age group?
The age group, it tested very well with 10-year-old girls, including my daughter, who's seen some episodes. So it's anywhere from 10 to grandpa. So it's really, really well-written comedy, really funny. So anybody can watch it.
Okay, and what are you playing? Which one are you? Rock, paper, scissors?
I play scissors.
You play scissors.
One.
All right, rock, paper, scissors. Super Bowl Sunday. Lauren, you got a song coming out, I assume?
Yeah, a song will be coming out this week called They're Writing Their Campaign Ads For Us. Just about how the Republicans are writing it. And I'll also, I've got my Jewish Mother show, reframing the Jewish mother stereotype, that will be at the Marsh as part of Monday Night Marsh on March 4th and March 18th, trying to follow in Brian's wonderful footsteps there. And so that will be on the website for the Marsh and my website, laurenmayer.com, or my YouTube channel, Psycho Supermom.
And I want to mention, by the way, something you said earlier about, the musical that you wrote, that you were told by the theater that they're just doing bigger, that they're just doing traditional stuff. And that is what's happening. If you look at what the theaters are showing, there are theaters that are major theaters here in town that are mounting Guys and Dolls and a chorus line, and they're doing well.
Yes,
as a
Playhouse.
It's comfort food. I mean,
my son is a drummer at SF Playhouse, and he'd much rather play original, fun stuff. I can't fault them, but it's called Unsung, the musical. It's the story of Marie Dressler.
Yes.
So we'll get it out there somewhere.
Yeah, you'll get up there. You might have to sit on it for a while, but the time will be right. Time will be right. And Daymon, where can people see you?
Just check DamonFerguson.com for all my upcoming dates. We'll keep it short and simple.
That was short and simple. DamonFerguson.com. Daymon Ferguson. Lauren Mayer, Carlos Alazraqui. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you doing the show.
It's fun.
I'll have you all again soon.
Bang, bang, night gang.
All right, that's going to do it for us for this week. We'll check you out next week. We'll know whether or not Trump will be on the ballot. I guess we'll know by next week.
Maybe.
So if you like and want to support the show, a couple ways you can do it. One is if you're listening to us, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, please give us a 5-star review. That helps people to find the show. Tell anybody you know any way you can. Send them the link. Send them a copy of the show if you like the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're trying to we need 1,000 subscribers so we can do this live. Right now, we record on Wednesdays, drop on Thursdays. Once we get 1,000 subscribers, then we can do it live on Thursdays, in which case it'll be a lot more fun because you can chime in while we're doing the show, with questions and with comments and whatnot. And I'm looking forward to that. So I will check out. Reviews.
Spellings of insults.
You can send in your reviews. All right. So until next week, be kind to your neighbor. He knows where you live.